All right, everyone. The Supreme Court, in somewhat of a surprise, actually, to me, has decided to actually take up the issue of birthright citizenship. Now, there are caveats to this. Link in the description, archived, of course. This applies specifically to Trump's order with regards to people that are born in the United States, but their parents are both here illegally. So this does not apply to, for example, in my situation, I'm a U.S. citizen. My daughter was born overseas, but she has the right of naturalization because she's got a U.S. citizen as a parent. So it's not the magical soil sort of thing. It also would not apply. Let's say someone comes illegally to the United States, but the mother or father is again a U.S. citizen. Again, it would not be applicable. This is specifically applicable only in the narrow sense of people that are coming here illegally are not entitled to citizenship. They have a child. The child has been born on U.S. soil. Now, the general doctrine that has been utilized for a very long time is basically, regardless of parentage, if the child is born on U.S. soil, they are automatically entitled to U.S. citizenship. SCOTUS has decided to wade into this issue, and I think I know why. I think that they are inclined to end birthright citizenship for people who are simply born on U.S. soil, but their parents are not actually legally in the United States. I think they're going to lean in that particular direction. My prediction is that they're going to cut down birthright citizenship. Now, this will open a can of worms. This is why I'm surprised that they even took up the case, because normally SCOTUS is relatively, they're more solemn. They're a little bit reluctant to take on cases that have such wide-reaching implications, because this would definitely be a problem. You've got several problems. You can either say, okay, basically anyone who comes onto U.S. soil, if you happen to drop a baby in the baby carrier, they're automatically a U.S. citizen. That would piss a lot of people off. Or you could say, no, they're not entitled to citizenship. Then you've got to grapple with a secondary issue. What about people who already were granted that citizenship, despite the fact that retroactively, potentially, they're no longer due citizenship? Also, what about people who would fall under that umbrella who have been here for a prolonged period of time and don't even have any connections to their home country? I'm not sure exactly why SCOTUS decided to wade into the issue, and that's why my suspicion is that they are inclined to try to get rid of this happening. You could do a narrow ruling, and this is probably what will happen. I believe that they will rule that a person born on U.S. soil is not automatically due U.S. citizenship if their parents are both illegally in the country. That is, that they're not lawful residents and or citizens. In that case, that's not what's being considered. I have a feeling that they'll end that, but I don't think that they're going to grandfather it in for people who already fell under the broad umbrella of the old system, which was you're born on U.S. soil, hey, you're due U.S. naturalization. I think that they'll try to limit their decision. I think that this will be a narrow decision. I think that that's the most likely and also, by the way, the most wise outcome. It is odd that people can come into your country, they're not even legally there, and a child is born, they have no connection directly to the United States, and then they're simply a citizen. They use the pejorative term in general parlance, anchor babies. So the idea is that if a couple comes here illegally, but they get pregnant, and of course, you get free medical care because people who aren't from the country get better treatment than people that were actually physically born here. That, you get to stay, and because your child is a citizen, they don't deport the parents. Again, it's called an anchor baby, but most of you already know this. So it does seem an odd policy because most countries don't do this. In most countries, if a couple of people go into your country and just have a child, the child is not automatically given citizenship there. This is an abnormality, actually, in which the United States, despite claims to the contrary by generally liberal commentators, that it's massively racist, horribly unjust, and mistreats people who are from foreign shores, No, actually, they are treated very well here. You can get free medical care. You can get free housing, or at least subsidized housing. You can even get a driver's license in some states at this point. Hell, you can even vote in some cases in municipal elections and things like that, which also should not be happening, even if you're illegally in the country. But the idea that you can anchor yourself to the country simply by fucking, that really never made sense. If there's a U.S. parent involved, obviously I am against the concept that that person should not be able to become a U.S. citizen. At least one of their parents is from the United States, is a citizen or lawful resident, and is doing nothing wrong. The fact that they happen to shack up with someone who came illegally really doesn't change the metric because think about it pragmatically. Let's say you have a deportation situation. Deportation situation should probably be a band name. Maybe Copium can take care of that. It would be a side gig like Arcadia was from Duran Duran or something like that. If you have an American parent, child is physically in the United States, even if the other party is deported, at the very least, the baby would be anchored to the United States by the fact that one of their parents was American. It would actually deprive them of their parental rights if you were to take the child and force them out of the country. But if both parents are illegal, it makes more sense to simply deport them to their country of origin. And this, in some cases, it might be multiple countries. That could be its own can of worms. So there's the third layer of this onion-like problem, and the child would be a citizen of that nation. Now, you could probably figure out some sort of side system, like because they were born on U.S. soil, maybe they're given, residency or something like that, and assuming that everyone is law-abiding and there's no other problems or something, then eventually they become a citizen. That would be a little bit different, but that's not the system that we're using. Right now, the system is if the child is born on U.S. soil, regardless of any other circumstance, they're automatically U.S. citizens. So basically, if Nicolas Maduro were to flee Venezuela today and screw his girlfriend or wife, or I mean, he's probably gay, but whatever. Screw, some woman, get her pregnant in the United States. Even though he's a communist dictator and he'd be illegally here and probably end up in Gitmo, the child would still be a U.S. citizen. This sets up an automatic conflict of interests. There's really no soft solution to this actual problem. No matter what SCOTUS decides, some people are going to be pissed off. If they end this system, then liberals will complain. If they retain the system, people on the right will tend to complain. If they do what I suspect them to do, which is say, look, this is a narrow ruling, no, you can't have automatic citizenship in a case where both parents would otherwise be deported. And then they retain birthright citizenship under other circumstances. So U.S. parent, lawful residents, have a child, something like that. I think that's probably the best possible outcome. So I'm hoping that the Supreme Court justices interpret the Constitution in that particular manner. Um, that would make sense. It would be the sensible, pragmatic way forward. It would also be the most constitutional because it depends on how you construe the Constitution with regards to being subject to U.S. law and so forth, because there are multiple mentalities behind actually construing it. So the Supreme Court has decided to wade into this issue and open up one hell of a can of worms because, again, there's 3 or 4 layers of problematic discourse that's going to have to be had with regards to the issue. Honestly, the only surprise here is that they took up the case in the first place. I hope that they make the right decision. That's about all. Peace out.